Good morning. Boy, I'm really impressed that there's so many people that really truly know this hour of the morning. I very seldom see it. And I want to especially thank Larry Crepeau. Larry's the owner of Monteau. And for those of you that haven't been here for dinner, I'll tell you, they serve great food, they have great service. I just really want to thank them for opening us up to this Westside Professionals group. I also heard that I get a gift certificate here. I'm really excited to hear that from Chuck McClung. Recognize a number of faces here this morning, and again, just thank you for being here. We're talking about overcoming the challenges in life, both personally and professionally. I've had a fair number, as you can imagine, given, as Jeff just mentioned to me, gosh, you have a pretty busy schedule, don't you? I do have a very, very busy schedule, and that's purposeful. If I'm not busy, I have ADD, and I tend to just kind of bounce around a whole bunch. So I have to be very structured in my life. Tom Crawford here really surprised me as well. Former chairman of Northwest Medical Teams, came from California, and we have a board retreat this weekend. I'm really grateful to have this friend and brother here. Today I'm going to talk, as I mentioned, on overcoming challenges both personally and professionally. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my life, the experiences that I've had, the challenges that I've had, give one or two examples. I could give you a myriad of different examples. And I'm going to share with you the reference point from which I approach these challenges. Because I believe that unless you have a reference point, you really don't have the basis to develop a strategy to overcome these challenges. I'm then going to go on and talk about some of the tools that I've effectively used. And I'm going to share with you also some of the tools that I've used that in the end really weren't tools. They were roads that I went down that were kind of dead ends. And my hope is that in this whole process I can give you a nugget or two that you can take away and you can further ponder. Nugget or two that you can implement immediately in your lives to overcome the hurdles and challenges. I looked up challenges in the dictionary, actually last night. I should have done it way back when I prepared this talk. And I really wasn't happy with the definition of challenge. The word challenge was defined in the American Heritage Dictionary as requiring the full use of one's abilities, energy, and resources. I thought that was okay, but I really like hurdle. And we all know what hurdles are in track events. A hurdle really is overcoming a difficulty or an obstacle. We have hurdles in our marriages. We have hurdles in our families. We have hurdles with our health. We have hurdles at work. Rick Colson from Intel, I understand he's a fellow. I really don't quite know what a fellow is. One of my neighbors was a senior fellow. And I thought, is there an age limit for this? I didn't quite understand the term. But I found out through Pat Gelsinger and a couple others that in fact, a fellow is a pretty big deal. And you've attained a certain level or status within the Intel organization. And it's a prestigious position. Well, Rick Colson talked about really setting an expectation level for his life that was based upon a composite of all of the positive features that people were demonstrating around him. And I thought, boy, that is a dangerous thing to do. Do I do that? Sure, I do that. Many of you do that. But then I thought about it in the context of this discussion we're having this morning. And I thought, we look at our problems and the hurdles in our lives similarly. How many of us look at these situations and we say, you know, that couple there really has it together. They don't have any hurdles or problems or challenges in their life. Well, to the contrary, every single one of us is dealing with something right now in our lives. We all are pretty secretive in the way that we approach these hurdles. I happen to be one that wears my heart out in my sleeve. I have friends that are thinking about a couple of the hurdles that you won't hear about today, that are thinking about me and praying for me, as a matter of fact. And for that, I'm quite grateful. But again, looking back at Rick Colson, you know, our problems, we have a lot of problems, and we have a lot of hurdles to overcome. In January of this last year, my daughter began seeing a counselor for an eating disorder. And I thought, oh boy, I have fouled this young lady's life up. What have I done? Well, come to find out, they're really not that uncommon. My daughter was in counseling for a couple of months, and my wife came home one day, I'll never forget it. She said, Mike, Michelle told me that we probably ought to hospitalize Amanda. This is a very acute case of anorexia. And all of a sudden, I just hit right upside the head, and I thought, oh my Lord, what to do? What can I do? So the first thing I said, well, I better start praying about this, because this is way over and above my head. I had visions of my daughter lying in St. Vincent's Hospital with an IV hooked up to her wrist. I had visions of a young lady who became skin and bones from an athletic 10, 11-year soccer veteran playing at the highest levels. What was ironic is that she had just quit soccer that year, and her identity suddenly became somewhere out there in cyberspace. She didn't really know who she was. So she was controlling her life through this eating disorder. Anyway, long story short, how did we approach this hurdle is really the issue. We approached it immediately. We took this issue and we put it back in her court. And we openly communicated with her, and we said, this is your challenge. This is not ours. This is your challenge. We said, over the course of the next couple of weeks, you get to determine whether you're going to go into St. Vincent's Hospital or down to some Bermuda ranch in Arizona, which I would never do, just personally. And we had people praying for us. I told everybody in my sphere of contacts and acquaintances and close personal friends. My wife, interestingly enough, belongs to a group of women that meet on a regular basis, and she told these women, out of the 10 women in her group, 4 women said that their daughters either had recently or were dealing with eating disorders of this nature. 40% of the women in this group, yet nobody had ever mentioned it. Life's little secrets. How do you overcome these hurdles? We'll get to some of these tools shortly. We confronted the problem, we accepted the problem, we embraced the problem, we dissected the problem, we prayed, we had professional help. We had people that were helping her professionally and advising us as parents. Within a matter of 3 weeks, my daughter's eating disorder had changed so substantially as a result of the way that we approached this problem that the counselor said she had never seen anybody have such a quick turnaround. I would say that by the grace of God, we are grateful, and we were happy with the way that we approached and dealt with the problem. There's a way not to deal with problems, and I'm going to talk about a professional hurdle and circumstance that my partner and I encountered. I have a partner of 15 years. If you look at our skill sets, they are perfectly matched. I love this man. He is my second wife. We're like-minded on values. We're like-minded in the way to approach business. We have fun, and I am a whole lot better than I could ever be as an individual. We worked for a company for 20 years prior to the company that we currently work with. From the day that I started, there was one person that had it out for me. He saw me as his biggest competitor. He was going to take me out of my knees, whatever it took, whether dishonestly or honestly, didn't matter. I determined that I could overcome that by just working hard, producing a lot, and being the best that I could be. Well, about 15 years into it, we were at the top of the game. And when you're at the top of the game, people get envious, jealous, they really want to take you out. They want to see you fail. And the truth of the matter is, the experience that we had at this former company, we had people that were stealing prospects from us. They were taking our database. We had people that were actually sharing information with our competitors that was confidential information internally that gave us a competitive disadvantage. My biggest competitors were in my office. Very tense, very ugly environment. Ultimately, the manager of the company determined that he was going to become our competitors. He said, you know, I'm kind of tired of them making this kind of income. Maybe I ought to do the same. So he got subsidy from the company. It just so happened that he was related to two of the founders of the company in New York. So he had pretty much what I guess they describe as tenure. And we determined that the writing was on the wall. It was time for us to move on. Well, the way that we approached it, we went out to the marketplace and made it be known that we were kind of open to offers. But in the process, a bitterness, an anger, a resentment, a hatefulness, a real negative feeling emerged. It was like a cancer that built inside of us. So what we did is we took this and we just stuffed it inside. Although we did pray about it, we did deal with many of the hurdles individually, we did stuff it. And we became embittered. We isolated ourselves from others. We didn't trust anybody. We were, frankly, paranoid. And we got to a point where it was just untenable. As a matter of fact, during this time, I just thought about this. My partner developed prostate cancer at 51 years of age. And I truly believe that as we internalize these things and we don't deal with them straight up, that these things can happen. So this is really my example as to how you not handle it. We were self-righteous. So instead of really doing something that would be in the character, and I'll get to it shortly, of my reference point, the Bible, instead of doing it that way and being different than the rest of the world, we reacted as the world would. We reacted with all those emotions that I just shared with you. And so I don't believe that was healthy. Retrospectively, I look back and I go, a couple of the guys determined that they were going to call us after we left the Righteous Brothers. Okay? And I don't really want to be known as a righteous brother. I don't want to be known as one who's pious and above somebody else. To the contrary, I want to be known as one who cares for others, who loves my enemies, and who truly is interested in the welfare of everybody, as my role model does. So, what is this reference point that I was just talking about? The reference point, I believe, before you can determine how you're going to deal with these problems, and I've just shared with you how you do and how you don't deal with these problems, the reference point for me is the Bible. I determined that some problems, some hurdles are well above and beyond that which I could ever handle. And actually most problems are. There are many people who on the flip side would say, you know, I'm self-sufficient. I've gotten here all by myself. I'm going to attack this problem. And I would call some of these people control freaks. We all know who the control freaks are that surround us. We all know those who have to be in control and who have to deal with these problems head on. I mean, we're all called to deal with the problems, but some of us give it up to a higher power. I would tell you that as a result of my giving that up, it gives me a real strong sense of purpose. And as one has a strong sense of purpose, it gives you energy and strength to get past these hurdles that we all encounter in life. And again, the Bible gives me this sense of purpose. The 4 truths that I want to share with you from this reference point are that suffering is inevitable. Challenges are inevitable. Every single one of us is not immune, a double negative here, but is not immune from dealing with these challenges. The second thing I'd tell you is that challenges make us stronger. I look back at how my wife and I responded to my daughter's situation. It made us stronger as a couple because we came together with a common purpose. We had to think together about how we would overcome this challenge. And retrospectively, we look back and it made us stronger. The third thing I'd tell you, just like the people who called me self-righteous and pious, other people are watching us. They're watching how we deal with challenges. So your kids, when you confront a challenge, they're going to be watching. They're going to be watching the integrity and the means by which and the tools you use to approach these hurdles in your lives. So the kids are going to be watching, and others are going to be watching, and it's an opportunity to really show what you're made of. And attitude is everything. Attitude is everything in approaching your problems and challenges. It's been said and documented in double-blind studies that, in fact, cancer survivors are predominantly those who look at life in a glass half full type of way. They look at life looking for the opportunities, I'm going to use the statement, making lemonade out of lemons, often used, but they look for the opportunities to take those difficult circumstances and even make them better. My father-in-law, a great example of that, he had a stroke 10 years ago. He has lived in a nursing home for 10 years. And we could look at this and we could say, oh, woe is me, this is a difficult deal. I see him once a week. But I have a relationship with my father-in-law that I never ever would have had he not had his stroke. Second of all, my father-in-law has had the opportunity to see all of his grandchildren grow up around him. And despite his circumstances, which, by the way, the human mind and body is so resilient, he's accepted marvelously. So how do you approach these problems? Do you accept them? Do you make the best of them? That's really important in terms of how we deal with our challenges. The things that we did right, my wife and I, is that we accepted, we confronted, and we embraced the challenges that were before us. We had a choice of handling it totally opposite. We could have denied that a problem exists. We could have just said, it'll work itself out. Instead, there are a few forms of acceptance, there are a few forms of denial that I'd like to touch on briefly that relate to some of these tools that I talked about earlier. Humility. Humility is basically admitting, in this case, that you've got a problem. Versus pride, the thing that you don't want to do. You don't want to be prideful and say, gosh, I don't want to admit that I have a problem. Men are very, very successful at this form of denial. And we just say, I'm strong, it'll all work out, no problem. Can't tell anybody that I have a little crack in the armor here. You need to deal with it immediately, now. I believe that you tackle it now. That's the best strategy. The other strategy that I often use in the workplace is I procrastinate. I put things off. Are there any other procrastinators in the room? Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I saw a lot of hands just start to come up. At least people are admitting. That's the good news, the first good tool. The other thing, I've heard this term used with counselors. They say unpack the problem. Dissect the problem. Break it down into pieces so that you can approach the challenge and hurdle in individual component parts and pieces. Its corollary is stuff it. Okay? How do people stuff their problems? Well, do you ever catch yourself when you're kind of uptight and worried about an issue in life? You might find yourself overeating or maybe having a couple extra shots of alcohol at night. And you're not really dealing with the problem. You're numbing yourself to the problem. So unpack it. Unpack it and don't stuff it. Transparency. Remember I talked about my wife's being transparent in this women's group? What happened when she told all these other women? She gave them a license to be transparent. Be transparent. And suddenly, misery loves the company of misery. A lot of people build shells around themselves to protect themselves from the arrows of life. As an author named John Eldredge often says, he's one of my favorite authors. If you haven't read any of his books, I'd highly recommend it. But John Eldredge talks about building these shells and layers of shells as a result of all of these hurts that we've had in our lives. So that's just another form of denial. Number 2 on the do list in terms of how to approach your hurdles, seek others' encouragement and assistance. Whether you seek the help of friends, you might have a group of men, as an example, that get together on a regular basis and just sharing our deepest, darkest secrets. But seek the assistance of others. Seek professional help if you need professional help. Don't be bashful about doing that. A lot of people do. Most people end up doing it in their lives. The other approach would be to isolate yourself. Many people, when they have these challenges and hurdles, they just isolate themselves. And they choose not to deal with it. And there are many, many men. I don't know if you've heard the statistics, but it's been said that 40% of men have a secret life. Have a secret life on their computers or sexual addictions and this type of thing. And one of the biggest, darkest, best kept secrets in the world. So you get isolated, you get more isolated, and it's not a good thing to do, obviously. That just prompts other problems and hurdles that you're going to have to deal further on, just kind of prolonging those in your life. Rise above the storm. Tom Crawford, that I introduced to you earlier, had sent me an email once, and I actually pulled it up for this morning. And I just love this metaphor because it's about eagle and flying on eagle's wings. In the Bible that I referenced earlier, it says that God will lift you up as if on eagle's wings. Did you know that an eagle knows when a storm is approaching? The eagle will fly to some high spot and just wait for the winds to come and lift them up. And so when the storm hits, it sets its wings so that the wind will pick it up and lift it above the storm. And while the storm rages below, the eagle is soaring above it. When the storms of life come upon us, and all of us will experience them, we can rise above them by setting our minds and our belief toward God. The storms don't have to overcome us. We can allow God's power to lift us above them. But God enables us to ride the winds of that storm that bring the sickness, the tragedy, the disappointments and hurdles in our lives. We can soar above the storm. Remember, it is not the challenges of our life that weigh us down. It's the way that we handle those challenges of life that weigh us down. The other approach that we could take is to quit. We can just throw our arms up. How many marriages end up in divorce? We know that 40 to 50% of marriages are going to end up in divorce. People just quit. Say, I don't want to deal with these problems. I don't want to deal with these hurdles. I'm just going to take a different route. Again, another way, in my opinion, not to handle your challenge is to quit. And finally, endure and persevere. And that's what I was talking about here with regard to just embracing and accepting that challenge. In summary, it's all about accepting and confronting and embracing the challenges that confront us. It's all about using a tool of seeking encouragement from others and support from others as we face these challenges. It's about being honest and transparent in our approach to these problems. And it's about persevering through and breaking through those barriers and overcoming those hurdles in our lives that really will help us to grow. It'll help us to build character. And last but not least, certainly, and not necessarily in this order, I would put prayer up at the very top of my list. In this case, I have it at the bottom of the list. But pray. Seek prayer from others. I've seen some incredible results, miraculous results as a result of prayer. Finally, I want to read to you this prayer from a famous theologian. And many of you have heard the first part, and I'm going to ask you to listen through the entire prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Live one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship and trusting that He will make all things right if I surrender. That I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with Him in the next. Thank you very much for your time and attention this morning. I welcome any questions, and don't pretend to have all the answers. One question here.
You mentioned you handled the business problem inappropriately. What were you not doing then that you did later? I know the difference in how you handled it, but what was missing before that you didn't use the same approach?
Great question. The question was, what approach should I have taken to the challenges and issues that I was dealing with on a professional level that would have gotten a better result, perhaps, than I got in my former company? When your manager comes into your office and tells you that you're intimidating, and you tell your manager that the truth is intimidating to him, that's the only thing intimidating, then you've got a problem. So, was I self-righteous? Was I kind of pious? I think so. If I had approached him a little differently, I think of a guy named Don Miller. I don't know if you've heard of Don Miller. He's written a great book, a book called Blue Like Jazz. And he approaches life totally differently. He happens to have a same reference point that I have. Yet, he's a Reed College grad, and he understands life a little differently. He's probably more intellectual than I am. But they had probably the best analogy was they had a little confessional booth they set up on the Reed College campus. And the Reed College campus is probably the most secular place in this world. And he determined that he was going to put up this little confessional. And they were going to put themselves in this confessional, a big toga party going on around the campus. And they would, when people came in, tell the people that they needed forgiveness, and they wanted to confess what they had done wrong in their lives. Not only is that cathartic, but it's also opens up the other party, as we talked about earlier. When my wife opened up these 10 other women, she did it by being transparent. Likewise, when you humble yourself, when you become vulnerable, suddenly people are open to hear what you have to say. And so I didn't become humble or vulnerable. I hit this guy across the face. And he went storming out of my office. And truthfully, I think he was in tears. I think he was in tears. And I didn't show a lot of grace. I didn't show a lot of grace. I didn't really want to hear what he had to say. I didn't like what he did to me. And so my approach should have said, okay, I've got this problem. Let's dissect the problem. Well, my partner and I had done reasonably well in dissecting the problem. But we didn't sit down with him and say, you know, I appreciate what kind of tension and problems and issues you're dealing with in your life. But, you know, we're also facing the same. And have kind of an open dialogue around it. We stuffed it. And we didn't approach it in a graceful fashion. And I think there were a lot of things that would have been difficult to change. There were a lot of things that we couldn't change. But we certainly could have been more grace-giving. And I think that is really the key point here. Yeah. Any other questions? Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Does forgiveness have a place in the business world?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. And I really did have an intention of covering that subject. A perfect question. Does forgiveness have a place in the business world? By all means. Forgiveness has a place everywhere. I'm going to tell you also what I did to one of the young men that worked for us that we had a big problem with, because he did cut us down at the ankles anyway. I saw him in a restaurant with another fellow one day following my leaving the former company. And I went into the restaurant and saw the two sitting at the table together. One I cared for, the other I was very angry and bitter with. I walked past one and I shook hands with the other. And I came back to my office and I told my partner what I'd done. I was sheepishly. And my partner said, that wasn't good. And I said, you're right, that wasn't good. So what are you going to do about it? I'm going to call the guy up and I'm going to apologize to him, because I stooped down to a level that was absolutely not me. That was not me. But I sure felt good doing it at the time. So what I did is I called the young man and I said, so-and-so, what I did was really weak. I said, I want to tell you, you know that I feel real bitter and angry about our parting. And I just want to tell you that I'm getting over it. It's taken a little more time to get over it, but I just want to apologize for what I did. And since then, thank you for your question, a great question. I've forgiven him. I've forgiven everybody at my former company. They actually had a party after we left. And I've forgiven them. And it's truly a heartfelt forgiveness. And there is a place for us to forgive the Skillings of the world for what they've done. We've learned a lot from them. There's a place to forgive people in your lives, in the workplace, that have it out for you. There's a reason they do. They have the issue. Don't accept the issue. Let them continue to have the issue. Support them, encourage them, and be there. Don't change yourself to accommodate their issues and problems. Rise above the storm. Rise above that storm and look at it in the context of what is, the question I leave you with is, what is the purpose for my being here? What is the purpose for my being here? Now, I just so happen to tell people when they ask what my purpose is in the workplace, I say I'm a full-time minister. because I like to share with people. I like to hear people's point of view. I'll talk to a Muslim client of mine. We'll talk on the issue of faith. We'll talk on the issues, whatever issues they want to discuss. I want to talk to them. I want to be there. I'm going to learn from them. They're going to learn from me. And that's really what my job is. I enjoy that facet of my business as a full-time minister. Any other questions? I think we're a few minutes past time here. Thank you so much for, thank you so much for having me this morning. It was really a privilege to be here with this group.